Welcome back. So, recent news around the Winnipeg Jets has turned over the last few days. And you know what's interesting is this is a Winnipeg Jets team that's off to a very good start this year. They're off to a very now. If you read the articles being written right now, you'd think they're off to a terrible start. Everything's all in disarray. So Patrick Laine gets traded. He basically, spills the beans on how things worked with him and the coach and how Scheifele and Wheeler want to play together, and they basically, we're line mates, we play together, and how upsetting it is because it was holding him back only being in the top six, only being on the second line. I've talked about this before. There are plenty of players who do very, very well on the second line, and you don't have to be on the first line to be really good. Bo Horvat in Vancouver, as an example, he's a second line center. Has not hurt his production at all. I've never heard him complain about being behind Pettersson. It's not a thing. And for most players, being on first or second line, it's not an issue. It's an issue because it's being made an issue. It's being turned into something that it really isn't. For years, we've looked at the Winnipeg Jets, and we've seen a team that's really good offensively, could probably use some help on the blue line. And it feels like every year that becomes more of an issue. So we're going to take a look at it. I'm going to start off looking at their points over the last 4 years heading into this one. 87 points in 2016-2017. They missed the playoffs that year. The following year, 114 points, right up there near the President's Trophy. They go to the conference finals that year. 2018 was a good year to be a Winnipeg Jets fan. The following year, they drop to 99 points. They lose in round one against St. Louis. And in 2019-2020, they projected out to 92 points over an 82-game schedule. And they lose the play-in round against Calgary, where immediately they lose Scheifele and Laine to injury, and they never recovered from that. So this year, the expectations, all over the place. You could expect them to be first in the Northern Division. You could expect them to be sixth, and you could come up with reasons for both. Right now, they have a record of 5-2 as I'm recording this. Their goal differential is a +7. They're playing very well. Power play is 16th in the league at 20%, which is okay. Their penalty kill, a problem. It's 68.4%, which is 28th. Laine doesn't penalty kill. So there's that. Their goals for per game is tied for third in the league with an even 4. 4 goals per game. Their goals against 3, and that's an even 3 again. That's tied for 17th overall. They're scoring goals. Not allowing goals has been part of the problem. Their shots per game, 9th in the league at 32.6. Their shots against, 21st at 31.3. They do allow more shots than they probably want to. Now, before we get into the current roster, we're going to take a look at exits and just players who left after each season. So, 2016-17, we saw Pavlik, Postma, and Thorburn exit. The team has a great 2017-2018. They brought in Paul Stastny as a rental. He didn't stick around. He goes to Vegas. Of course, he's come back now in a trade with Vegas, right? So Stastny left, Armia left. That was part of a cap dump. They had to get rid of Steve Mason's contract. Armia was the sweetener to Montreal. And it was one of those ones that I wasn't 100% happy with. But for Winnipeg, they had a lot of depth forwards. And so they could afford to make that trade. Enstrom left, Matthias, Hendricks. Hendricks would actually come back as well after that, but then he leaves again in a trade. Hutchinson and Melchiori. So again, if we're going to talk about there's clearly a problem, which seems to be what the whole underlying issue is, that there's got to be a problem. I don't think there is. I think it's gone. 2018-2019, one of those problems, Jacob Trouba was finally gone. He goes to the Rangers. Jacob Trouba had been clearly miserable in negotiations with Kevin Cheveldayoff. This was an issue where Trouba thought he was worth a certain amount of money over a certain time. He wanted to get his term and his money, and Cheveldayoff wasn't going to give it to him. The Jets clearly had a vision of what Trouba was worth, and it did not agree with what Trouba felt he was worth. So that was a divorce that had nothing to do with anybody on the team and their place or how much ice time, because Trouba had a ton of ice time with Winnipeg his last year there. Hayes came in. It was an expensive rental at the deadline. It was a draft pick they then traded to get back and became Ville Heinola. Hayes was middling with Winnipeg. He goes to Philadelphia. He's been great in Philadelphia. I don't think it would have worked that well if he'd stayed in Winnipeg. Tyler Myers, he moves on as a UFA. I don't think anybody's going to look at that contract with Vancouver and say, gee, I wish he'd stayed in Winnipeg for that amount of money and that amount of term. Brandon Tanev. That one kind of hurt a little bit in that he goes to Pittsburgh. I like Tanev, good depth player. But again, at that cap hit, Winnipeg, who have had cap problems during some of these seasons, they didn't want to be spending money that would cost them a chance at saving a guy like Laine, or now at the idea of being able to keep Dubois long term. So they had to watch their money. Sherratt, he moves on to Montreal. Joe Morrow, Par Lindholm, and then, of course, Dustin Byfuglien decided he wasn't going to play anymore coming into the 2019-2020 season, which broadsided the Jets and their fan base. And it was decimating because you've already lost Trouba and Myers off that blue line, and now you've lost Byfuglien as well. So that is 3 of your top 4 on the blue line who've decided that they're out of there. And so that was hard. But again, it has zero to do with the forward group. This has all to do with how the defense has been eroded, and that's something Winnipeg needs to resolve. And they didn't with the Laine deal. I always figured if they made a Laine move that they would resolve their issues on the blue line, and they didn't. And then, of course, this past offseason, Kulikov, Eakin, they leave. Boteto, Letestu retired. Nick Shore, Dahlstrom, Gabriel Bourque, Logan Shaw. None of these are parts that by losing them, Winnipeg ends up in serious dire straits. Kulikov, that's some depth on the blue line that they lose, but they figured with the guys coming in, they'd be okay, right? So let's take a look at their group. Because honestly, again, the conversation being one of, and I think what got me was there were a couple of different articles I read today where they said something needs to change. It's got to change. This whole thing in Winnipeg, this idea of the Wheelers on the first line, it's got to change. They got to change how they treat the young guys. Do they, though? Because here's the thing. Kyle Connor's 24 years of age, makes $7.1 million. He's signed until 2026. Mark Scheifele is only 27 years of age, makes $6.1 million. He's signed until 2024. Blake Wheeler is 34 years of age, yes, makes $8.2 million until 2024. Now, that contract might not age very well, but so far it has, and he's still scoring more than a point per game. How do you look at a guy who's scoring more than a point per game and say, that guy sucks? Oh, okay. I guess it's sports fans, so it's possible. But then in your top 6, now Andrew Kopp is proving what I've known all along. This kid's great. 26 years of age. I'm older than 26. I'm allowed to say kid. $2.28 million. He's a restricted free agent this summer. So again, for Winnipeg, they do have to keep an eye on how they're going to keep these guys happy. And for Kopp, with how well he's playing right now, they're going to want to find a way to keep him out of Seattle's hands. Because if you're Seattle right now, that's the guy you're targeting. That's when you're looking at and saying, that's the perfect age. He's proven he can produce in a top 6 role. We like Kopp. Stastny, 35 years of age, $6.5 million. He is in the last year of his contract. He's looked fantastic, though. That's why I left him at the second line spot. Ehlers, 24 years of age, $6 million a year until 2025. So 3 of the top 4 wingers for Winnipeg, 24, 24, and 26. So no, Laine didn't end up getting Wheeler's spot. But when you've got Connor, Kopp, Wheeler, and Ehlers, I don't think you have a problem when it comes to your top 4 wingers. So Laine was always somebody that if they traded him, it wasn't something that was going to hurt the team necessarily as long as they got the right return. So you've got Matthew Perreault here, 33 years of age, makes $4.1 million. And in terms of his cap hit, I'm just looking at cap hit. That's all I care about. That's up, though, this summer. And you got to think Perreault, if he goes back to Winnipeg, it'll be on a lower amount of money. Dubois, $5 million, 22 years of age. He's a restricted free agent, not this summer, but next summer. But they're going to want to keep him around. So what this does is it means that Dubois will move into that second line center spot. And their top six forwards, 24, 27, 34, 26, 22, 24. But this is a team that has a problem with young players? Are you sure? So Appleton's here on the third line, 25 years of age, $900,000. He's a restricted free agent in 2022. On the fourth line, you got Harkins, who makes $725,000. He's 23 years of age. He's a restricted free agent next year as well. Lowry's 27, which isn't old, $2.9 million. He's a UFA this summer, so they're going to have to negotiate with him. Trevor Lewis came in on a 1-year, $750,000 contract, 34 years of age, so he's UFA this summer again. And then depth-wise, injured currently, Nate Thompson, 36 years of age, $750,000 contract that's up this summer. Gustafson, he's 20 years of age, $817,000 restricted free agent in 2022. Vesalainen, who they're still hoping will become a top 6 at some point, I believe. That's got to be their hope. 21 years of age, $894,000, and he's a restricted free agent next summer. There's a lot of young forwards here. A ton of young forwards. So, again, the idea of moving a young forward so you can get help on the blue line makes a lot of sense. Look at the blue line. Morrissey's only 25 years of age. He's been there forever, but he's still only 25. $6.2 million until 2028. He's not going anywhere. DeMello signs an extension. He's 27 years of age. $3 million cap hit till 2024. Derek Forbort, 1-year contract, $1 million. He's signed until this summer. Pionk, 25 years of age. He's a restricted free agent this summer again after signing a 1-year, $3 million extension. Logan Stanley, who's looked pretty good so far, 22 years of age, $863,000. He's a restricted free agent this summer. Nathan Beaulieu, $1.2 million. He's only 28. Again, he feels like he's been around forever too, right? His contract's up in 2022. Ville Heinola, 19 years of age, currently sitting healthy scratch, sometimes in the lineup, $894,000. He's a restricted free agent in 2023. Sami Niku, 24 years of age, $725,000 cap hit. He's a restricted free agent in 2022. And there's been rumors about whether or not he has a spot long-term in the Winnipeg lineup. Then you got Sandberg here, who hasn't made his debut yet. He's 22 years of age, $925,000. He's a restricted free agent in 2023. And you got Tucker Pullman, who's 27 years of age, currently in COVID protocol, and $775,000 contract that expires this summer. I don't see a lot of old players here. I don't see a lot of players that we can look at right now and say that's the next guy who's going to be disgruntled and want more ice time. I don't see anybody on the Kopp, Stastny, Ehlers line right now complaining about all the points they got last night. And I haven't seen a whole lot of people say, well, yeah, but they got less ice time than that first line, so that sucks. Paul Maurice, I think, has done a very good job with the Winnipeg Jets, and he's done a good job for years. And I understand there's people who might want to get mad at him for the way he does things. But if the idea is that, well, Scheifele and Wheeler are telling him they want to stay together, and he's the coach, he should break them up. Why? Because the reason you're going to break your lineup up, the reason that you see line shuffling during games is simple. You're losing. You're losing games. That's why you change up the lines. You're losing during a game. That's why you make those line shuffles in the third period. Usually it's very telling to me when a team is when you see a game that's tied, say 1-1 going into the third, and one team is doing line shuffling to try to fix it. And you go, okay, that team is a little more worried about this result. The team that's still keeping their lines together has faith in those lines. I think they're probably going to win. The interesting thing, too, is their goaltending. You've got Hellebuck, who's 27 years of age, makes $6.1 million till 2024. You've got Brossoit, who signs a 1-year extension for $1.5 million. So he's only there until this coming summer. They're both 27 years of age. If anything, I look at this lineup and say they could probably use a couple of graybeards maybe in the depth on their blue line. This was a team that maybe they could have used as Zdeno Chara if he was willing to go to Winnipeg. But the other concept, too, that gets me is when people say, well, nobody wants to play in Winnipeg. This is what happened. Nobody wants to play in Winnipeg. Then why did Hellebuck sign a long-term extension? Morrissey, huge long-term extension. Connor, long-term extension. Scheifele, long-term extension. Wheeler wants to retire here. Ehlers, long-term extension. None of those guys said, I don't want to play in Winnipeg. I'm going to go play somewhere else. And they could have. So it does get overblown. I think it gets overblown, the idea that guys don't want to play in Winnipeg. Guys aren't happy in Winnipeg. Because, again, they wouldn't have signed long-term extensions. They would have just said, no, I'll sign a 1-year bridge, but I kind of want out of here. So I'm gonna sign a contract until I can be a UFA. You're not buying my UFA years. And as soon as I can, I'm out of here. And I remember seeing that with teams back in the early 90s, the teams that got moved. There was plenty of times where players just would not want to commit, wouldn't want to be there. And then when they got traded out, they'd be like, it is a disaster back there. Nobody wants to play there. I haven't seen that with Winnipeg. And anytime guys get traded, you're going to hear that, well, things aren't necessarily great in the locker room. Right, because you've got 20 plus different personalities in the locker room. You've got guys who are all fighting for the same ice time, guys who are, fighting through games, and if they're losing games, there might be some finger pointing going on. It's just the way it works. You kind of have to be a player who has a certain level of ego to be a National Hockey League player. And that's not going to go away. Now, for some, they can kind of check that ego at the door and say, well, I'll do whatever I can for the team. And for others, they're going to say, well, I'll do what I can for the team, but what's in it for me? And that's the dividing line. And then when you get those guys in contact with one another, there's probably going to be some conflict. If they win a Stanley Cup in 2018, who knows? Everybody might have been happier. But that's not what happened. And for Winnipeg and for Winnipeg fans, this is an interesting year in that now you've got Dubois coming in. That fixes the number 2 center spot behind Scheifele. Stastny likely drops down to 3, but I don't want to drop Stastny off that line because they've been fantastic over the last few games. So to me, Dubois goes into that 3rd spot. Lowry drops to number 4. And look out, all of a sudden they might have the best center spot in the North. They might have a really good chance of coming out of the North. So you're going to see guys leave. There's been a lot of players that have left, but I think Cheveldayoff gets a lot of credit for the lineup he's put together. Yeah, I still look at this blue line, and I do see some weakness there. I do wonder how they're going to do over a long playoff run with that blue line, but they can score. Even with Laine gone, we know they can score. Laine was very streaky, and they were still winning games even while he was on one of his downbeats. So I do think the Jets are going to be okay, and I really honestly, I don't know where people want Wheelers to be exactly, because again, you've got Kopp, Stastny, Ehlers. That line looks fantastic. Connor, Scheifele, Wheeler, that line's been together for years. They know each other. It's easy. Wheeler knows where Scheifele's going to be, and vice versa. So, yeah, and I think the fact he's 34, kudos that he's still able to get her done. He may not be the most fleet of foot. That's fine. They got Ehlers for the speed. Ehlers has enough speed for everybody. And so far, Ehlers has been awesome this year. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.